But then when it carries on consistently, then we see that things are going the way dumsor is, then I will say yes, there is dumsor. But as at now, I cannot say we are in dumsor.
If they said it's not dumsor, then they have to announce so that we will be aware. It is only the evenings that market boom. So in the evening when we are selling and there is no light and this place is dark, you have to pack and go. Because even in the daytime, the thieves are worrying us. So how much more in the evening when you are in the dark? It is worse. At least if there is a power shortage or there is a fault somewhere, they should alert us so that we will know that this is what is going on. So we will prepare for it. But it shouldn't be like we are there, then they will off the lights the whole day.
Me wabra na highlight some de anya kra hwe mitire ho. Miti me ka se me koye. Me ya koye salon for see my light off.
The electricity issue here in Abra is heartbreaking. Have been unable to visit the salon because of the power outages. As I speak to you now, I'm sweating badly because of the heat. It's been very distressing.
Because light na no mudi ye adwuma ho. Edu anwumre so ne e ba beda so no ma say adwum light. Teacher say ha na the light off na.
It's been affecting some of our household equipment and stuff at home, but I think it's something that has become something of a norm, which shouldn't be the case, but it's sort of a norm right now. Of course, preferably would want things to be improved. If we could get a stable lighting condition throughout, why not? It would always enrich the economy, it would always make things better. So
today, dumsor, they are kicking it like a football. Why? Because he wants to kick it over the 7th January 2025 line and hand the trouble over to somebody else. And yet we resolved it before they came into office. Today they put value added tax on electricity bills and COVID levy, NHIL levy, Get Fund levy, all on electricity bills. And so that is going to send the cost of your electricity bills up. Already there was a 29% increase, there was a 19% increase. Then they tried to fool us with a 4% decrease. And now it's going up again astronomically.
Right. A Newsfile is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Europlus, producers of quality PVC and HDPE pipes and water tank. Where Europlus goes, water flows. DBS Industries, roofing, Papa Fie. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex tanks, it's strong, it's tough. Flamingo Paint, simply superior. Snake Seed, as a self-employed enrollment drive. You can participate in it. It's your future, so own it. Hubtel is everything you. And thanks also to Doormasters. My guest for this segment, Ben Boakye is Executive Director, Africa Center for Energy Policy, ASEP. Kofi Bentel is still with us. Andrew Kofi Ejapa-Mensah is Deputy Minister of Energy. Edward Abambere Bawa is member, Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament, is MP for Bongo. Once again, thanks to Alex Segbafia and Andy Kwame, Pierre Kubi, and Professor Ajiman Bafo Ajimandria, who were with us earlier. So let me go straight to Ben Boakye, Executive Director, African Center for Energy Policy. What's the problem with our energy, our electricity? What's the problem with it?
Thanks for having me. This is a big one, but I mean, if we are referring to what happened last week, it essentially was a curtailment of supply of gas from the Western Corridor to the east, where we have significant, power plants, located. So we didn't have gas coming in to be able to power the power plant, and that was because WAPCO had to shut down the valves because we owed them. So that's what actually happened. I think on the 9th, they did that, and it didn't come out of a vacuum. This alarm had been sounded a number of times for the payments to be made, and the regular payment, a structure established for that. I remember in December they alerted the government that they were giving us up to the 8th of January to pay the money outstanding, failing which they would shut down, the valve. And true to their word, they did it because they had informed us that they were going to cut supply if we did not do that. And for me, I don't know why we wait for that to happen, because if you look at the power sector and the payments that we have to pay, I mean, it's the least of it. It's not as huge as what we have to pay IPPs or the even Greco or any other player in the sector. Their entire payment will be a maximum of $7 million a month, usually around 4 or 5 million, when we are not flowing up to 110 or 115 SCAF, per day. So, and the way the power sector is structured, if we don't have the gas flowing, what it means is that you're not having the power plants also working. And the power plants, if they don't work because gas did not flow, you're still going to have to pay them because you have take or pay agreement. You're still going to have to pay for the gas because you have take or pay agreement. So the ramification for not having the gas flowing is quite wide, and you would expect that we are cautious of how we get that piece of the value chain always active and working, whilst we manage the rest of the challenges. I do appreciate that the challenges are in multiple folds across the entire spectrum of the power sector. So that is what actually happened.
Right. So, government, we've been told about the debt as you referred to, and so far we've been able to settle some, is it $13 million? We have up to $6.3 million remaining to pay. Is that it? Once we make that payment, then the coast is clear. We shouldn't expect any problems going forward?
It's a going concern. I mean, we always are piling up. Every month comes with its own bill of about $7 million. So if you add, I think up to December, the total was about $24 million. And from what I understand, the Ministry of Finance has paid $10 million, and GMPC has also paid $2 million. So $12 million of that has been paid. So that means we still have half of the bill outstanding. And whilst we speak,
GMPC has paid $3 million.
Maybe there's an additional $1 million, but the evidence I have is $2 million.
Okay.
On the 10th, they paid $2 million. And then Ministry of Finance on the 12th paid $10 million. So that brings it to $12 million, unless they paid another $1 million. So that's what it is. So we are still accumulating the debt as gas flows. So how we sustainably address that liquidity challenge is, for me, the bigger question on the table, so that it's not recurrent. Because they did that, I think, October or November. They shut it down after prompting GMPC and government, and then they've done it again. And my suspicion is that because of the liquidity challenges across the board, if you want to get your money and you know that the only language government understands is shutting the valves, we would expect more of that if we don't get...
So from where you sit, this is not a wisdom problem, it is a cash problem.
It is a cash problem. It's a cash problem that has been sustained by a problem, diagnosis that we had as far back as 2014, where we talked that the power sector was suffering from three things. We were suffering from managerial problems, we were suffering from technical problems, and we also had, liquidity challenges. So these problems haven't gone away, and all of them work together to bring us to where we are today, where the budget essentially being sacrificed, to keep the light on. And that for me is unfair. to the Ghanaian people that require significant investment. I'm sure Honorable Mesa would have loved to have his constituency getting more money, but that money is being used to pay electricity bill. All right, it's being used to sustain the light, which for me is really unfair to the Ghanaian people. We need to get this power sector working as business, all right, where the generators get their money because power has been generated. The transmitter gets his money because power has been transmitted. And the distributor also make money because they are working to distribute electricity.
Do I hear you say that we are not paying the price we are supposed to pay for electricity, and that is the problem?
Far from it. I think it's really the inefficiencies in the power sector. I mean, when we buy power from the generators, up to 30% or more is gone for commercial and technical losses. So what that means is that you can't even get money for it. All right. And what you even are able to bill, we can collect as much. So cumulatively, what we are able to get at the last mile is about 30% of the cost of the value chain. So that 70% has to come from somewhere. And we train the data. The more you increase the tariff and bill, the very few faithful ones, they also decide to skip and exit the grid. So illicit trade of power is growing by the day, because we think that tariff is the solution and we keep adjusting it. And that's what we've done over 100% in just a single year. And that hasn't transformed the cash or the liquidity challenges that we have.
We went into dumsor because we had inadequate capacity. Now we understand we have excess capacity. It's just that we are unable to pay for it. So is dumsor properly, so to speak, potential in the future?
I think what happened in 2012, 2013 was much more complicated than how we sometimes think that there was no generation and therefore we went into challenges. It was similar management problems that we are seeing today that brought us where we are. And I recall clearly, because I was in the space, what led to the other. It started with, gas supply curtailment. And what we did at the time was just to turn on the turbines at Takusombo, and we turned on the turbines in Bui just to be able to meet the demand. Before we knew it, the dam had run out of water. And also some of the power plant had not been maintained, the TICOs and the TAPCOs that were there, because we're running them on heavy fuel oils and diesel. They couldn't go to the scheduled maintenance because we're just doing the politics with it. Right? And it's the same thing we are doing today. Right? What we are supposed to do is to make sure that plants go on the scheduled maintenance, they are working as they should, and we are not stressing them. If you have to shed the load. Don't keep plant working more than it's supposed to deliver. All right. So that scenario is playing out. And if we don't watch it in various segments of the value chain, we could get into trouble. And today, you look at the state of Gridco, it's not sitting pretty well because it is not doing the maintenance that it's supposed to do. So you have many localized outages because the grid is not holding up. And, Akosombo is also being the backbone. Now, one of the turbines is being fitted, worked on. We can hope that the others can also sustain the pressure. If you have problems with gas supply and WAPCO keeps turning off the power, the liquidity situation also worsened, and that put more pressure on government to raise money to be able to buy liquid fuel. So all of these things can crystallize into a bigger problem that
so you will not hesitate in voting for the tax on electricity, right?
Not really. I think I don't have a problem with VAT on electricity, but you have to analyze it from systems perspective and where we are. And I think it is not the right time to do that because we have a problem where people are stealing power. We don't have a solution to it. And the more you increase the burden, the tendency for them to, more people to steal power is really high. All right, we don't have the systems to be able to address the leakages that are happening everywhere in the country. And just adding another layer of tax is not going to, government has been taking VAT from businesses they hardly realize that money, because once it gets into ECG's hands, and they can collect much, they can pay the IPPs, they can pay transmission, they can pay the state agencies like VRA and BUI. I mean, there is no money. So that additional tax on consumers, who are about 35% of the total consuming populace, I don't think is going to shift anything. What we need to focus on is making sure that those who are not paying pay. We're able to account for the power that is generated. We have the systems to do that. And once we be able to clean up that space and being able to optimize the tariff so that it is much more less burdensome on the people, then you can then go into these kinds of things to see how do we generate more revenue. Otherwise, you only have a few credible consumers who are always taking the bullet. They're always taking the higher tariffs on themselves, and that wouldn't change anything at this point.
Thank you very much, Ben. Edward Bauer, you are with the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament. Of course, you have also been in this area when the NDC was in government. What do you find to be the problem, and how do we get out of it? Hello, Edward. Please unmute your mic.
Yes, thank you very much, Samson, for the opportunity. I said that I'm up north, and then the weather has taken a toll on my voice. So, but I hope it is audible enough for a discussion.
It is, please.
Look, I think that Ben Boakye captures a greater part of the issue, and the issue basically is the fact that we simply do not have, the whole system is not liquid. And it's because of the fact there's so much wastage. I just want to make a bit of a correction, or maybe not correction, but just a disagreement with Ben when he talks about the problems between 2012 and 2016, or maybe 2014 and 2016. It is true that even after the first crisis that we got, that was under the Kufuor government, even before 2009, it was very clear that yes, we had financial issues within the sector, we have managerial issues. We also have technical issues, and particularly on the basis of adequate generation. So we had these things. And so it was very clear as a country, anybody who was a player in that sector knew that these problems needed to be solved. And I think that one of the areas that was solved was the fact that government then decided to add enough generation to the grid. And that is an issue we can talk about later. But there was yet also another thing, the financial issue. The financial issue was that over the period, because of the legacy debt that we had, that had been accumulated through the years, we came to the conclusion that, look, there must be a way of ring-fencing this particular debt and finding a way of retiring them. Whilst doing that, we should be able to also see how we can ensure that the system going forward is very efficient enough not to accumulate debt. And that's why, if you recall the Boakye Jaco's vetting, he had indicated that if you look at the total amount of debt that was within the sector, it was about $2.4 billion. So then the issue of ESLA came in, and the then government had a feeling that, look, in 5 years, based on the rate that have been put on the Energy Sector Levy Act to get those monies, in 5 years, we should be able to retire the legacy debt whilst ensuring that we have the efficiencies within the sector going on. You and I know that change of government. The government even came and then increased, because there was a sunset clause for that act, increased it to 10 years, and then issued a bond for 10 years, a 10-year bond of totaling about 10 billion that was supposed to be used in retiring this debt. You and I know that that didn't happen. The financial situation has become bad. Why is it bad? And what happened a few weeks ago is just a symptom, and just as Ben said, is the lowest part of the problem that we have, because that is just a small amount of money. Because if you have a situation where the ECG buys power and cannot account for the power, definitely they cannot pay all the people up north. Like in terms of the value chain going up, because they don't have the money, they can't account for the power they bought, and therefore they have a problem. I'll give you just a scenario to see. Based on documents that were given to the Mines and Energy Committee, and for that matter, Parliament, by ECG in March 2023, I just give you just a few things. if you look at the technical and commercial losses in terms of money value, and the trend, you see the trend is so disturbing. You see that in 2017, for example, you had the total loss as at the end of 2017 was 541,609,699. In 2018, it came to almost about 1.5 billion. In 2019, it was around 700 million. In 2020, it became about 2.2 billion. In 2021, it was about 2.3 billion. And in 2022, it was about 2.6 billion. And these are monies that ECG simply cannot account for after they have bought the power. So if they cannot make it, what that means is that they cannot pay all the other players up north. But let me tell you something. These particular problems that we're having, whether it is shortage of a shortfall in capacity payments, whether it is fuel payment, these are all things that are factored into the end user tariff. So Samson, myself and you, if I go to buy power today, per our arrangement, I pay because fuel is a pass-through cost, if you look at the calculation. So it means I have already paid for the fuel that is supposed to be used in generating the power. And so government should be able to or maybe the utility, ECG, should be able to pay for that. Because when I pay, they are able to do that. How come that they cannot do it? It's because ECG cannot account for this particular power that is being distributed. So you see that in all the sector, in all the value chain, he used the word gridco. He gave gridco as an example. As of 31st December last year, 2023, gridco had invoiced ECG to a tune of about 1.4 billion as the amount of money they needed to pay. ECG needed to pay gridco. ECG could only honor 23% of that particular bill. So what it means is that about 77% of that bill simply, 77% of that bill simply was not paid to gridco. So gridco cannot have an investment they've been done. They cannot improve on their operations. There are a lot of things that cannot be done. You come to BUI, and I'm using just government sector before I come to the IPPs. So you look at the BUI, because of the fact that BUI has to pay back the debts that we took from, in terms of the Sino Hydro deal, to construct the dam. They invoice ECG on in dollar denomination because that's how they are able to get the money to be able to, even though you and I know that they are even unable to do it. Sometimes Minister of Finance has to intervene to do the payments. If you look at BUI, for the whole year, they could only honor 18% of the total bill that was sent to ECG. Now, what business can run on situations like that? In fact, last 2 months, and that's November, December, we had to even, in terms of payment of their workers, had to go on for an overdraft to even pay workers. That's how bad the situation is. So it is a liquidity problem. We've not been able to manage the place very well.
All right.
We have not. And just a last one before you make. You see, again, sometimes the serious accountability we have to look, because the moment ECG has a problem, it affects everybody. A typical example, and that's a question of accountability and transparency. You had the managing director of ECG announce to the whole world that, look, I was embarking on debt collection program, and that the target was to get about 7 billion from customers who are defaulted and what have you. At the end of the exercise, they were able to declare 5.31 billion Ghana cedis. The question you ask yourself, what did they use the money for? Because the cash waterfall mechanism that was created to ensure that all the players, so in this cash waterfall mechanism, it's just a pot that all the monies are put in, and then there's a predetermined formula where they say this money is put here. So fuel, fuel suppliers take your share. This, and they give them in terms of proportions, and normally there's a scale for that, and it's predetermined by all the players.
All right.
How come that mechanism has stopped? And so it is a financial problem. It is a problem to a very large extent that has been brought onto ourselves. We could have solved this problem.
Thank you. Let me bring the minister on now. Ejapa Mensah, thank you very much once again. And in the course of the week, we were all so very worried. For example, I get up in the morning, I get to my office, and suddenly the lights have gone off. And for the whole day, I don't have light. I didn't plan to buy diesel, and I have to do all of that. And then I have to plan the next day, how will life be like? And you are hearing from all over the places, people are talking about how their lights, have gone off. Then you came with the assurance that it is over. Is it really over?
Well, let me say good afternoon or it's still morning to our listeners and viewers, and of course, my co-panelists. I'm sure that when Ben was articulating the issues relative to what happened on the 9th and some hours of the 10th, it was quite clear that there was an issue with respect to gas transportation from the west to the east, which then led to WAPCO curtailing their services to GNPC. That problem was resolved on the evening of the 10th. And so as we speak, we do not have any curtailment in gas transportation from the west to the east. And so the plants are all running at full capacity. And as far as I know, from our systems control center, there's been no outage of electricity or, if you like, deficit in generation from the 13th, on the 12th, and even on the 11th. And so if
except that prior to that, people had, experienced intermittent outages, but I'm not sure if we can attribute that to what happened.
So that's why I'm coming there. Indeed, and in fact, WAPCO reduced the volume of transportation on the 2nd. And so what we did was to reduce our export volumes to make up for the shortfall in local generation demand.
All right.
Okay. And so, like I was saying, making reference to what Ben said, probably some grid-related issues may account for the outages that people encountered in their homes during the period. Okay. But when it comes to the issue of generation itself per se, the information that I have is that apart from the night of the 9th and some hours into the 10th, where we had up to 700 or so megawatts of power taken off. And so we had to cut our export to reduce that 700 to about 510. We haven't had any deficit in generation in the domestic market from the night of the 12th to date, or if you like, the night of the 10th to date. Hello?
Yes, I'm listening to you.
So that's the thing. And
right.
Indeed, you're right. And Ben to a large extent is right when it comes to the issue of the curtailment. Timing really was an issue for us. Okay. And so I personally had discussions with the Chief Executive of WAPCO to grant us some space as we work with Ministry of Finance to procure approvals to pay up the deficit that ECG have been able to make available to GNPC to pay. So, of course, she also had to go through her own internal approval processes, and so that could not be granted. And so they took off the power, the services on the night of the 9th.
Right.
And by the 10th PM, it had been restored.
Yeah.
So what we are supposed to do going forward, and for which I can assure our listeners that this eventuality relative to payment of WAPCO services will not recur is because in August, when we did a review of the cash waterfall mechanism, we segregated it into 2 tiers. Tier 1 to deal with the foreign IPP payments, for which a negotiated 43 million fixed sum had been agreed between the IPPs and ECG. So on a monthly basis since August, ECG has been paying the IPPs their due, and there's no delay, if you like, with respect to that. They've been current on that. The debt that had accumulated prior to the August start date of the implementation of the new cash waterfall mechanism is what has been ring-fenced by the Ministry of Finance, and some negotiations have been going on with IPPs to pay it over a period of time. Okay. As of end of December, we have concluded discussions with about 4 IPPs, and the 2 that is outstanding, we are still engaging to conclude negotiations on that. So following this issue with WAPCO, what the ministry and the sector players have agreed is to move the WAPCO fee from tier 2, okay, to tier 1 to assure constant payment of that fee so that whatever comes in the pot, then remaining is then allocated to the rest of the SOEs and local. So that's what we've done to ensure that, as Ben rightfully indicated, we don't have to joke with the fuel transportation component because of the take-or-pay obligations that we have on the gas front.
So you are repeating the assurance that despite the difficult economic circumstances we find ourselves, despite the bit of delay that has happened with the monies we expect from the IMF, the $6.3 million that we owe, we will certainly take care of it, and we will not come to dumsor.
I don't know why you're relating the payment of the gas transportation services to the difficult economic circumstances, because in spite of the difficult economic circumstances that have bedeviled this country over the past 3 years, the lights have largely been on. What it means is that the government has prioritized energy and has invested, and rightfully so, to the detriment of some sectors of the budget and all that. Okay.
All right.
So yes, that assurance is given. And to correct a point that Ben made, GMPC actually paid $3 million in December, I believe on the 29th. Okay. And then subsequently $2 million on January 10th. And the Ministry of Finance, $10 million went to the players yesterday. So in total, some $15 million has been paid. And as far as I know, the December bill is not due yet. Okay. And so that cannot be factored as part of the obligation. The obligation as of end November, which was due by end December, was $19.3 million, of which 15 has, as of today, been paid, leaving an outstanding of, I believe, $4 million, which we are working to pay sometime next week, because there's been email correspondence between with respect to how we pay that money. And going forward, the December invoice, because of the decision that we've taken to add it to the tier 1 payments, will be fully paid by ECG and GMPC, because they also sell part of that gas that is transported to non-power consumers, for which they receive payments that they are then able to put together with what ECG has to pay them to pay fully for the gas.
Thank you very much, Ejapa Mensah. And Kofi Bentil, forgive us, but we'll give you just a minute's comment as our time is up. Yes, Kofi.
Right. So we have just a minute. What people used to ask me is dumsor coming back? And then recently they asked me, has dumsor come back? What I explained to them is that not all dumsor is the same. There is dumsor tico, and then there is dumsor bus. And dumsor can rise to the level of a double-decker bus. And I explained to them, trying to make sense of it, because it's a very serious matter, that ultimately these are finance decisions. These decisions are made in the Ministry of Finance, and they affect the energy people. So I have a lot of sympathy for Ejapa Mensah and co. All right, and we don't have time to go into it, but I think better finance decisions must be made. Things like VAT on electricity are retrograde. Now, the sad part is that what we've had is dumsor. Everybody should be clear about it. Dumsor is a finance issue. The government failed to act timeously. The reasons are there, but that's what happened. It is dumsor. But this is dumsor tico. It is not the kind of dumsor we had under this government, which totally uplifts economy. So please, I can understand, but we don't have the time. We should just avoid a situation where this dumsor tico becomes a dumsor bus and becomes a dumsor double-decker bus. And it is a finance issue.
I can assure you that we'll get there.
All right. He's repeating the assurance that we will not get there. Thank you very much, Ejapa Mensah. Let's hope that this assurance is kept.